Hello, everybody. Welcome to CGU, Christ Grace Unlimited. My name is Trust in Christ. And as I always say, today is a good day. Today is a great day. Today is a day of the Lord. And we're going to pick off pretty much where we left off at. We're in 1 Kings chapter 20, right after Ahab confronts, Jezebel and Elijah, confronts Ahab and Jezebel for whoring against God, a king from the northern kingdom. Ahab defied God and killed the prophets of Baal, him and his wife Jezebel. And during that 3-year period, it was a 3-year famine where it did not rain. And we see that God showed who he was by declaring himself who he was by calling down fire through Elijah. And what we see, Elijah fled, and now he's back in the presence of Ahab. And you're going to pretty much see how Ahab changes. Ahab humbles himself. Ahab, he acknowledges who the Lord is finally. And, it's kind of a redemption story to an extent when you look at this. On one hand, you see that this man, Ahab, he was not raised right. You see that. He was not raised right. Just like you see with Jehu, and you look throughout the Bible, what in the book of Judges, who raises you matters. And Ahab, as you see in his lineage, he was pretty much the seventh king of the northern kingdom. His fathers before him had a bad track record ruling over Israel. And because of that, pretty much Ahab's, his character, his semblance, his morals was completely different. Even though he had, knowledge of God and having knowledge and wisdom of the Lord is two completely different things. Guess what he did? He did far worse, and he did not value it. But it took trouble. It took seeing fire come down to bring fear in the eyes of Ahab, where he humbled himself in the presence of Elijah. And the prophet Elijah, he anointed Elisha to take his place, and he anointed the kings. And pretty much right now in this chapter, you're going to see, God work in his favor, in this chapter that's coming up. God works in his favor, and not only that, Ahab disobeys God in spite of that. After all God showed Ahab, by the fire coming down, by God delivering him, he still disobeys God and doesn't completely obey God. And one thing you're going to see is kind of like you have the good king and the bad king. You have the kings like David, where they walk good in the sight of God. And you have kings like Saul, where they partially obey God. And that's one thing you're going to see in this chapter and the chapters to come. And it reminds me of what Charles Spurgeon says, the path of wickedness is not always blatantly wicked, but it's just a little bit wicked. That's all it takes, a little bit, a little leaven, a little corruption, a little disobedience can mess up everything. All right, so we're going to get started. Let me make this thing bigger because I'm blind. I'm legally blind. All right. Verse 1. And Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his hosts together, so all his generals together, his armies together. And there were 32 kings with him, and horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and warred against it. So pretty much, Ahab is going to be surrounded. And he sent messengers to Ahab, king of Israel, into the city, and said unto him, Thus saith Ben-Hadad, Thy silver and thy gold is mine, thy wives also and thy children, even the goodliness are mine. So pretty much, this king surrounded him while Ahab was dwelling in the land of Samaria. And pretty much, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to take your wives, and they're going to be mine. I'm going to impregnate them. I'm going to have children out of your bloodline, and I'm going to completely emasculate you and pretty much overtake you. And that was a common practice. Typically in war, and you even see this in World War II and World War One. The men a lot of times were killed off, and guess what happened to the women? They became the wives of their captors, of the victors, and that's typically what happened in kingdoms. In many kingdoms, the women would be raped, after a besiegement, and they were considered loot as well as, spoiled. It's something to look at. So pretty much Ahab is being threatened. You are surrounded, and guess what? Everything in this place, in this piece, is mine. Your gold, your wife, they're all going to be mine. I'm going to take it because I'm him. Verse 4. And the king of Israel answered and said, My lord, O king, according to thy saying, I am thine, and all that I have. And the messengers came again and said, Thus speaketh Ben-Hadad, saying, Although I have sent unto thee, saying, Thou shalt deliver me thy silver and thy gold, thy wives and thy children, as the prophet said, yet I will send my servants unto thee tomorrow about this time, and they shall search thy house and the houses of thy servants. And it shall be that whosoever is pleasant in thine eyes, they shall put it in their hand and take it away. And one thing you have to consider in the prior chapter, you see a judgment cast upon Ahab that pretty much his lineage will be wiped out completely. But because Ahab was repentant in his heart and he humbled himself, before Elijah, you see that the evil that was to be done against his house wouldn't happen in his lifetime, but will happen in his son's lifetime. And you're going to see that. So it's kind of like this. Is this really my time? Am I really going to be brought down? Is this how God is going to go about this? And the answer is no, not yet. Then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, Mark, I pray you, and see how this man seeketh mischief for, close that. Had a pop-up, little technical difficulty. For he sent unto me my wives and children for my children, and for my silver, and for my gold, and I denied him not. And all the elders and all the people said unto him, Hearken not unto him, nor consent. Wherefore he said unto the messengers of Ben-Hadad, Tell my lord the king all that thou didst send for to my servant, and first I will do. But this thing I may not do. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. And Ben-Hadad sent unto him and said, The gods do so unto me, and more so. So this heathen is still threatening Ahab, and I can't blame him. If the dust of Samaria shall suffice for handfuls for all the people that follow me. And the king of Israel answered and said, Tell him, let not him that girdeth on his harness boast himself, as he that putteth it off. And it came to pass, when Ben-Hadad heard this message, as he was drinking, he and the kings in his pavilions, that he said unto his servants, Set yourselves in array. And they set themselves in array against the city. So they gathered themselves to besiege the city. And behold, there came a prophet unto King Ahab, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou seen all this great multitude? Aren't you not surrounded? Behold, I will deliver it, I will deliver it into thine hand this day. Excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord. And Ahab said, by whom? Well, duh, God. And he said, thus saith the Lord, even by the young men of the princes of the provinces. Then he said, who shall order the battle? And he said, thou. So who's going to do this battle? You. Then he numbered the young men of the princes of the provinces, and they were 232. And after them he numbered all the people, even all the children of Israel, being 7,000. So small army, he's being besieged, and he's surrounded by a king that wants to take all, kill him, take his wife, take his silver, take his gold. And they went out at noon, but Ben-Hadad was drinking himself drunk in the pavilions, he and the kings, the 32 kings that helped him. And the young men of the princes of the provinces went out first, and Ben-Hadad sent out and told him, saying, there are men come out of Samaria. And he said, whether they be come out for peace, take them alive. Or whether they be come out for war, take them alive. I got so much strength. I got so much power. I don't have to kill these men. They're weak. Take them all alive. So these young men of the princes of the provinces came out of the city, and the army which followed them. And they slew every one his man. And the Syrians fled, and Israel pursued them. And Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, escaped on a horse with the horsemen. And just think about it. Was this a coincidence? A lot of people think because, people make mistakes and slip in circumstances that gives you the favor or that gives you the victory that is by chance. No, God made this happen. God made sure Ahab got the victory. The king, ended up getting drunk like an idiot when he's supposed to be besieging and killing Ahab. Was that a coincidence? No. God let it happen to give Ahab the victory. It wasn't a mistake. It was the glory of God to deliver him out of outstanding odds, being surrounded, that all of his few men slew slew the men that was surrounding him in Samaria. And he said, whether they be come out for peace, take them alive, or whether they be come out for war, take them alive. So the young men of the princes of the province came out of the city in the army which followed, and they slew every man his man. Verse 21. And the king of Israel went out and smote the horses and the chariots, and slew the Syrians with a great slaughter. And the prophet came to the king of Israel and said unto him, go, strengthen thyself, and mark and see what thou doest. For at the return of the year, the king of Syria will come up against thee. So pretty much God gives Ahab pretty much a drop on the king. He gives him foreknowledge. He gives him prophecy to prepare himself for another battle. This king that attacked you, he's coming right back. Prepare yourself. Strengthen your armies. This time you were able to overcome him. This time, he got drunk. But he's coming right back against you. Prepare yourself. You see how God forgave this man and he's helping this man as well. You see how God's mercy is showed in the Old Testament. It's kind of interesting. Even though Ahab did worse than his fathers. And I'll say he's probably one of the most ignorant of his fathers. Because Jeroboam wasn't as ignorant as Ahab. Jeroboam was just a straight up, people pleaser. Ahab just didn't have no regard. But look how God used fear to draw Ahab, in. It's interesting. I'm not going to go too deep, but it's interesting. And you also see a similar mercy shown towards Jezebel, but she never repented. We'll cover that later. Verse 23. And the servants of the king of Syria said unto him, their gods are gods of the hills. Therefore they were stronger than we. No, my God is the God of gods. He's the King of kings, Lord of lords, the Most High God, Elohim, Yahweh. He's ignorant. It's all right. He's going to get slain. He's going to get spared. Oh, well. All right. But let us fight against them in the plain. Let's change the scenery. And surely we shall be stronger than them. And do this thing, take the kings away, every man out of his place, and put captains in their room. So put military men in their room. And they number thee an army, like the army that thou hast lost, horse for horse, chariot for chariot, and we will fight against them in the plain, and surely we shall be stronger than they. So we're going to fortify ourselves, and we're going to come right back to smack them. And they hearkened unto their voice, and did so. And it came to pass, at the return of the year, that Benadad, just like the prophet of God said, numbered the Syrians, and went up to Aphek, to fight against Israel. And the children of Israel were numbered, and were all present, and went against them. And the children of Israel pitched before them like two little flocks of kids, but the Syrians filled the country. So they were outnumbered, Israel again. And there came a man of God, and spake unto the king of Israel, Ahab, and said, and this is a commandment given to Ahab to obey, just like Saul was given. Saul was commanded to let nothing live in the land of Canaan, where the Canaanites were. All right. So the man of God came to Ahab, and we see, and spake unto the king of Israel, and said, thus saith the Lord, because the Syrians have said, the Lord is the God of the hills, disrespecting God. He's just a hill God. He's just like the Greek gods, thunder God, wind God, feces God, doo-doo God. No, that's your God. Because you have disrespected God, but he's not the God of the valleys, therefore I will deliver all this great multitude into thy hand, and he shall know that I am the Lord. And one thing, don't you see how the fear of the Lord drove Ahab back to God in the sense how God gave him the victory, how God allowed him to see the glory of the fire coming down from heaven to consume that sacrifice. And in this sense, how, just like in the book of Kings, for the sake of Israel, how God is going to give him this victory. And they pitched, verse 29, over against the 7 days, the other 7 days. And so it was that in the 7th day, the battle was joined. And the children of Israel slew of the Syrians in 100,000 footmen in 1 day. That's a lot of men. But the rest fled to Aphek, into the city, and there a wall fell upon 27,000 of the men that were left. Ooh-wee, 25,000 men dead. And Benadad fled, so he escaped again. And they came into the city and into an inner chamber. So Benadad is on a run. And typically when you study besiegement, typically with the kingship, and you see this with Cleopatra, there's typically a hiding place for royalty once a besiegement happens, especially the queen, because typically the queen is raped and has another seed from another noble or the soldiers. So pretty much he's going into hiding into that city. He's on the run from Israel. And his servants said unto him, behold now, we have heard that the king of the house of Israel are merciful kings. Let us, I pray thee, put sackcloth on our loins and ropes upon our heads, and go out to the kings of Israel. Peradventure he will save thy life, which is smart. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and put ropes on their heads, and came to the king of Israel and said, thy servant Benadad saith, I pray thee, let me live. After having all that smoke, bringing that word, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to rape your wives. They gonna have my children. I'm gonna take your silver and gold. When he on the run, he ain't got nowhere to go. When he ain't got nowhere to hide, let me live. Can I live? Can I breathe? No. But Ahab does. Now the men did diligently observe whether anything will come from him, and did hastily catch it. And they said, Thy brother Benadad. Then he said, Go ye, bring him. Then Benadad came forth to him, and he caused him to come up into the chariot. And Benadad said unto him, The cities which my father took from thy father I will restore. And thou shalt make streets for thee in Damascus, as for my father made in Samaria. Then say Ahab, I will send thee away with this covenant. So he made covenant with him and sent them away. Why do the kings of Israel disobey God consistently? This ain't nothing new. Same thing with the generation that went with Joshua. God told them to drive out all the inhabitants and spare them not out of the land, but they made them pay tribute and taxes to them instead of driving these wicked people out, which, as God said, and it did happen, their wives, their children will turn your sons and daughters away from me. So Ahab, instead of driving them out, for God gave it to him, he made a covenant with a wicked man that serves another God. Trash. Don't you know that your company matters? Doesn't that say a lot? Did Ahab learn his lesson? No, he did not. He did not obey God with this. And a certain man of the sons of the prophet said unto his neighbor, In the word of the Lord, smite me, I pray thee. And the man refused to smite him. Then he said unto him, Because thou hast not obeyed the voice of the Lord, behold, as soon as thou art departed from me, a lion shall slay thee. And as soon as he was departed from him, a lion found him and slew him. Dang, it's crazy. I'm not going to slay you. The lion kills you. Then he found another man and said, Smite me, I pray thee. The man smote him, so that in smiting he wounded him. So he didn't kill him, he wounded him. So the prophet departed and waited for the king by the way, and disguised himself with ashes upon his face. And as the king passed by, he cried unto the king and said, Thy servant went out into the midst of the battle, and behold, a man turned aside and brought a man unto me, and said, Keep this man, if by any means he be missing, then shall thy life be for his life, or else thou shalt pay a talent of silver. Crying out. And as thy servant was busy here and there, he was gone. And the king of Israel said unto him, So shall thy judgment be. Thyself hast decided it. And he hasted and took the ashes away from his face, he unveiling himself. And the king of Israel discerned him that he was of the prophets. And that's pretty much his wording. And he said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, because thou hast let go out of thy way the hand of the man whom I appointed to utter destruction. Therefore thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people. And the king of Israel went to his house heavy and displeased, and came to Samaria. Don't you see? Pretty much this is another Saul. I'm not saying he is Saul, but similar sin. I'm not going to obey God. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to, add on to God's, word. And that don't work. It calls him to be judged. But one thing I want to notice, look at how much God has done for Ahab, in spite of being the worst king of his time before his fathers. Now there are worse kings than Ahab. You know, you have Manasseh that comes later on, but you can kind of say Ahab was kind of in ignorance, so God gave him a chance. You know, we don't know in full about that, but God gave him a chance, a fair chance. You know, he brought idols in Israel. He had no regards, to the God of Israel, and he had fear in this king. He had regard to their God still, even though God proved himself there. God proved himself, again in Samaria, where he, was given a victory after being surrounded. Gave him the drop on the king to forewarn him that he's coming right back. And guess what he does? Does he fully obey God's word through the prophet? No. Just like his fathers did, just like, the generation of Joshua did, just like Saul did, just like Jeroboam did. God gave him the kingdom, but yet he disobeyed God. He had 10 tribes besides Judah and Benjamin, but yet he disobeyed God. So pretty much he knew that prophecy was against him. He knew that one day soon he was going to die, and it's going to come soon in this book. All right, so we're going to end the Bible study on that note. Any comments before we end?
I do.
Sure. Go ahead.
Actually, I have a question about pretty much the ends of this chapter with the prophet um asking for someone to slay him. Like I was confused on that whole section.
Okay, so pretty much it's just a sign. So it's one of the thing, anything the prophet, asks, you're supposed to do. So because this guy disobeyed him, God calls them to slay him, and his appearance was known. So it's something hard to understand, but it is what it is. So he didn't say
Okay.
kill me; he just said smite me. So just stab me. And right after he did that, he departed. He gave the reason why. Um, excuse me. All right. Then he said unto him, and he gives a reason why. A certain man of the sons of the prophets said unto his neighbor in the word of the Lord, smite thee, I pray thee. And the man refused to smite him. And then he said unto him, because thou hast not obeyed the voice of the Lord, behold, as soon as thou depart from me, a lion shall slay thee. And as soon as he was departed from a lion, found him and slew him. Hold on. Let me go up. I thought it said the read. Okay, it's probably here. No, I think I'm wrong. In a
No,
certain
I
man,
think I think it talks about it more past that spot.
because I thought I read it. The word of the Lord smite thee, I pray thee, and the man refused to smite him. Okay, I know disobedience got him killed. We get it a little later, but we know it was because of the sin of Ahab. All right, anybody else? I'm gonna have to look into that because I don't know it all.
Hmm.
All right, we're gonna close out. The CGU is brought to you by